Thank you, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this and thank my colleagues for tabling this particular motion, and thank the government for accepting the motion. Minister, every single time a government minister comments about An Post, they make the point that it's a commercial semi-state company with a mandate to act commercially, and that it is statutory responsibility for the state's postal service and post office network. But that statutory role needs to change and must be incorporated into it, offline avenue for all government services. The post office network is the only state-controlled network that has a footprint across the country that can provide such a service. And since the emergence of COVID-19 in March 2020, access to many government services have been restricted to those who don't want to or who cannot use the online digital options. And throughout the pandemic, our post office network remained open. And it is long-standing government policy that postal services would not be directly subsidised. But no one is asking for postal services to be actually subsidised whatsoever. The government has, in fairness, been focused on supporting An Post in the rollout of new services and in the delivery of the strategic plan. But part of that agreement in April of 2018 with the postmasters regarding the voluntary closures was that there would be a subsidy put in place over a 3-year period to allow An Post to put new and additional services into the local post office network, and that the state would also roll out services across the post office network. No state services have been provided in the last 3 years. And we've now gone to a situation over that 3-year period where the government, at the end of that 3-year period, is looking at the feasibility of directing services to the post office. We have seen during the pandemic the important role that the post offices have played and the potential it has to develop new services, and yet here we are still talking about the feasibility of it. Now, in January of this year, the Taoiseach published Ireland's National Remote Working Strategy, which one of its objectives was that there would be a permanent option after the pandemic that 20% of government and public sector employees would be working from home by the end of 2021. Now, Minister, how in God's name can that happen if we are still operating counter services, if we're still operating paper forms that have to be inputted physically? We can provide that service if the post office network becomes the offline option for front of office services of government, and provide that option to many, many more public servants. But the difficulty is that the online service doesn't work for everyone. I'll give you one practical example of that. You cannot renew your motor tax online unless you have an email address. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of people across this country who don't have an email address, and should they be excluded from government services because they don't have an email address or they cannot use the technology? Now, the reality is, taking services offline and directing them through the post office network would eliminate costly paper-based notices and transactions, and I've outlined this in detail in a case study in relation to the rollout of the property tax. And what we need to see now is decisive action from government to support rural communities, to support vulnerable people, and to support our vital post office network. Now, the government, as you know, published the report on the provision of offline government services, which was established on foot of an interdepartmental group that was established in 2018, that produced this report in 2019. And lo and behold, at the end of that process, What has been the conclusion? To set up another interdepartmental group to look at it. Why is the support of our post offices always just one report away from action? The reality is that such a policy was taken prior to my appointment as Minister, and it nearly led to the collapse not just of the post office network but the company as a whole. And yet here we are, failing to learn from the mistakes of the past, continuing the political dithering in relation to this. We need to see action, we need to see urgent action, and we're committed to bring this back here to the House again and again and again and again until we see action to support this vital network across rural and urban Ireland. Go raibh míle maith agat.